Okay, hello and welcome everybody to this session on using Amazon Q Developer to accelerate VMware migrations to AWS. And thank you for making the time to come here today to learn about what I think is one of the most exciting changes to how we're thinking about migration and modernization projects. Deeply integrating the best of our migration and modernization tooling into a collaborative, agentic platform that automates away many of the most time-consuming and manually intensive processes from the beginning to the end of these projects. I hope by the end of this session you're as excited about this as I am. My name is Peter Romensky. I'm one of the directors of the migration and modernization space here at AWS, and joining me here on stage today will be Rajesh and Atul. So I'm going to start the presentation talking about the Amazon Q Developer platform at a bit of a high level, conceptual level, talking about mental models and how we approach the design. Rajesh is then going to do a deeper dive into how the application works, and the tool is going to give us kind of an end-to-end product demonstration so you can see it live in action. So by the end of this session, we hope that you come away with an understanding of how the Q Developer platform forms the future for migration and modernization, the kinds of mental models we use to help shape that future, and how that then enables us to accelerate VMware migrations to AWS. So I want to start by talking about some of those mental models, give you some insights into how we were thinking and framing the problems to do with migration and modernization. So typically, when we think about these projects, we think about them as kind of large, one-and-done type projects. You know, we pull a project team together, and once the project team is done, it's this isolated project, and they go off and do other work. But that's not really how we should be thinking about this project, because the act of actually doing a migration unlocks a whole lot of other opportunity to do modernization and migration as well. So that's the kind of thing I want to talk about. So when we think about these projects, traditionally when we've thought about these projects, it's been in the context and it's been rooted in a narrative of some kind of compelling event, either a data center that we need to get out of, or a big license renewal project that's coming up in 12 to 18 months, or an old piece of equipment that's come to end of life and we need to get the workloads off, or we've got a critical workload that needs better infrastructure ability. We need to be able to scale it up and scale it down in response to demand. So when we come across one of these projects, we spin up a project team and they look at the project opportunities and the risks to do with that, and they build out a plan over many months and maybe a year or two, and then they execute that project, and when they're done, they declare victory and they disband and go and do work on other critical projects across the business. Except that's not really how it should be, because the very act of doing that migration is just the beginning of the journey of doing more. Right? So let's say we've just finished that project, and for the purposes of this conversation, let's say that project was moving some workloads out of a VMware-based data center and into the AWS cloud. Okay, so now my journey has begun. Now I've got these opportunities to look at the databases that I'm running in AWS and thinking, well, I could move them off my EC2 instances and move them to a self-managed database running Aurora Postgres. Or I could look at my catalog of .NET applications and think, well, I could be modernizing the .NET and moving those workloads off Windows and moving them onto cross-platform .NET running on Linux. And then I could be taking them off cross-platform .NET running on Linux and thinking about how do I get them to Lambda, to EKS, and other serverless infrastructure. And then there's a whole lot of other workloads that I could be thinking about as well. So all of these workloads, regardless of whether they're running in your data center or whether they're running in AWS, many of them have the opportunity to be optimized and to be modernized. And the decision about whether to do that usually comes down to priority and effort, and whether I have the resources right now to actually execute on those projects. And so when I think about that, I think, well, the platform that we're building, Q Developer Transform, means that the answer to that question about whether I have the resources to do it is increasingly going to be yes. because I'm going to do it with less effort, with less risk, and with better collaboration amongst my team. So what we're launching here at reInvent today is a preview of 3 of those particular pieces of the journey. The first one is .NET Framework Modernization, running on .NET Framework and modernizing it to .NET Core, running on Linux. The second one that we launched was Mainframe Modernization, taking your COBOL code and transforming that to Java and running that on EC2. And the third one, which is the one that we're talking about today, is VMware migration, moving from your data center running on VMware and moving to running on VPC on EC2. And all of these capabilities are now all available within one single application, web application, where the Q developer framework is driving that modernization process for you. And your team can collaborate in one space. So I've hinted up to this point about some of the challenges that organizations face when they're thinking about these migration and modernization projects. And I want to dive into these challenges a little bit so that you kind of have an understanding of the kinds of problems we're trying to solve. So the first one that I want to talk about is complexity. And there's really 3 dimensions to complexity. The first dimension is the inventory. What do we even have in our data center? What servers have I got? What workloads are they running? What dependencies exist between those workloads? What databases have I got? What file storage have I got? Just understanding just all the inventory that's there. The second part of the complexity story is about the migration process itself. How do I actually execute that migration? What does that look like? What does a good migration look like? What are the tools that are involved? How do I set up my landing zone so that my servers can actually land somewhere that they're running in the right VPCs and subnets when they get moved to AWS? And the third type of complexity that we're trying to solve for, and that you need to that businesses find challenging, is the organizational project complexity. These projects involve a lot of stakeholders, and getting alignment between those stakeholders about what is the important inventory, what are the priorities, what is the kind of hidden technical debt that we should be thinking about, and how do we get the approvers in the loop to approve things when they need to be approved, and the people reviewing the right things, and the teams just collaborating. So they're the 3 types of complexity. The second challenge that businesses face when they're thinking about these kinds of projects is the skill specialization. What are the skills that I'm going to need to be successful? So I'm going to need to actually drive the migration process. I need someone to know how to do that. What skills do I need to actually run in AWS, right? How do I achieve the same security, availability, governance, posture that I had in my data center? How do I achieve that in AWS, and how do I then operate the services while they're running there? The third type of challenge that businesses face when they're doing this work is the innovation stall-out. These projects are sometimes large, and they require quite a few people from across your organization to help work on them. And they generally run for quite a long time. They can run for months, sometimes years. And so while I'm definitely making trade-offs against other kind of strategic initiatives across the business by dedicating people to this project, and that's the innovation stall-out. Right? And so how do we think about that innovation stall-out? How do I improve my return on investment on running these projects? And a lot of this thinking went directly into the product, thinking what kind of experience can we do to help minimize a lot of these risks and a lot of these challenges, so that it's more likely that people will be successful, that these projects run smoothly, and that they don't run with a whole lot of error, with a whole lot of rework, and that stalls the project out. All right. So let's dig into the platform a bit now. Let's have a look to see what the platform looks like at a conceptual level. And Rajesh will dive in, and you'll actually see screens and exactly what the user interaction looks like for some of these steps. But we thought about 4 key tenets that helped shape our thinking about the product here. So the first tenet was goal-driven. Okay, and I'll explain more about that in the coming slides. The first one was goal-driven. The second tenet was we wanted to automate more. We wanted to be super, super automated. The third one was we wanted seamless integration. And the fourth one was we wanted to keep a human in the loop. So let's dive into those 4 key points and see what that means. All right. So the Amazon Q platform is a generative AI, agentic, collaborative migration automation platform. So there's a whole lot to unpack in that particular sentence, right? And so let's unpack that a little bit. So specifically, the generative AI platforms give work to agents when they need to get something done, right? Something that's not just in the language model itself. And so specifically here, the platform, the Amazon Q platform is driven by a generative AI engine that hands work to agents. And in our case, the agent is the VMware migration agent. And the way it hands work to that is it gives it a goal. It says, please go and execute the migration process for me. And it does, and that goal can change as the agent learns more things about your inventory and the kinds of choices you make through that process. But that goal is represented by that top red arrow here. It says, please complete my migration journey. But the agent itself is actually made up of sub-agents. And these sub-agents are also goal-driven. So we've got this kind of 2-tier goal-driven approach where these sub-agents are executing on goals given by the larger agent. So what does that mean? These sub-agents are actually the migration tools that are doing the work. Okay, so we've got an inventory discovery tool that discovers what's in your network. We've got a wave planning tool that figures out how those things are related to each other. And then we've got a network conversion tool, which is a brand new tool, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then we have a migration tool that actually does the lift and shift of moving servers from on-prem to EC2 instance. So we wanted to make sure that these are really, really well automated tools. And we had feedback to say, hey, you know, these tools are good and all, but you could make them a bit better. And so we actually dove into each one of these and thought about how could we make this better to actually automate more of the manual steps so there's less work to be done by the humans when they're actually executing this stuff. So for example, for inventory discovery, we looked at our application discovery service and said, how can we make it better at discovering the workloads that are in the cloud, in the on-prem data center? And we did a bunch of work to think about, well, what other network protocols should we be looking at, and how can we get more accurate at detecting servers and make sure that our inventory is complete. We also support using RV tools as the inventory gathering process. You don't have to use application discovery service. And we wanted to be better at doing that too. So we expanded the size and complexity of the RV tools files that we could consume. When it came to wave planning, we had an opportunity to increase the accuracy of the waves. You know, it's a very time-consuming process to take, you know, several thousand servers with you know, several more thousand with multiple thousands of workloads running on them, and figure out which servers should we move in a group, which applications are talking to which. And typically this process is a fairly manual process. But this wave planning tool can look at all the network protocol interactions that are happening and figure out what applications are talking to what applications and how they should be grouped into waves so that servers that move together can continue to let those applications run. And we did a lot of work on the graph neural network, retraining it and retraining it again, trying to get it more and more accurate. The network conversion tool is interesting. You know, figuring out the landing zone is actually quite time consuming. We talked to a number of customers and partners, and they all said, actually figuring out the landing zone takes us quite a bit of time. And so we now take not only server and application inventory, we actually take network inventory as well. We look at the VLANs that you've got set up, what routers you've got, and what routing rules you've got set up, and we can turn that into a plan of the network that we can map directly from your on-prem network directly to VPC. So we can set up the appropriate VPCs, the subnets, the route tables, the transit gateways, the ACLs, the security rules, the internet gateways, and all the other bits and pieces to make sure that the landing zone that you end up with is something that we can migrate to and allows your applications to run. And then for the migration, we also did work. there was an opportunity to increase the size of the waves that we could do. You know, we started with about, I think, 40 or 50 servers per wave initially, and we significantly increased the size of the waves that we could migrate, amongst other things. All right, so once we've got these great tools that can do these really cool things, we need them to talk to each other, right? And avoid the kind of download a file, remassage it, make it fit the next tool and upload it again type of work that was fairly typical for migration projects. And so we did a lot of work thinking about how do we make these tools integrate with each other. And there's a couple of different approaches. You know, one is, hey, let's create a common data store that they can share data and share data so that we don't have to, you know, reformat data all the time and move data from one data store to another. So we did some of that. And then we also worked on, well, if this tool needs to talk to that tool, let's just agree on the interchange format and make sure that we can pass the data through. And we did some of that as well. And so now when the inventory discovery gathers some information, it doesn't matter whether it comes from RV tools. And by the way, by GA next year, we're going to add other tools as well, not just RV tools. And then to take the data, whether it's RV tools or application discovery service, puts it into a common format that the wave planning tool can consume and create those waves. And then we give the inventory to the network conversion tool, and that creates the network. And we pass all of that to migration, the application migration service, to MGN, and it can then figure out, hey, this wave with these applications map onto this subnet, and now I know where to lift and shift it to, right? And so we've kind of automated that process from end to end to make it much more seamless to get the migration happening from beginning to end. All right, the last thing that I'm going to talk to you about is the last tenet, is this idea of the human in the loop. So the human in the loop is the time when the platform starts talking to the people in your project team. And there's a number of different reasons why we need to do that. So I want to touch on some of the more important ones. The first one is selection. You know, when we gather a large inventory of information, of things to migrate, and let's think about it in terms of waves. We may end up with 30 or 40 waves. We may end up with 20 waves. But right now, I don't want to move all 20 waves. I just want to maybe move 2 or 3 of them, because that's what's important for this project and important for the business right now. And the other ones I'll leave for a later project. And so there's this idea of selection, is which things in the entire universe of things that we can work on are the ones that I need to work on now in this project. So this allows us to break the projects down into smaller pieces in the platform, and you can work on multiple projects and split it across multiple teams, in fact. Validation. You know, we work, some of the data that we have is very accurate and deterministic, but some of it is quite heuristic. And some of it is incomplete. And then we need to draw inferences from that data. And so we want to make sure that the data is accurate, and we want to get the experts in your team to look at that data and say, yeah, this is right. Or maybe they'll say, actually, I would prefer if this application moved from this wave to this wave, right? And so this idea of validation also goes along with the ability to edit. Approval is another really important one. You know, anytime we're about to take an action that is going to cost you money, or an action that is going to be hard to unwind, we want to get someone with authority to approve that step. You know, so if I'm about to shift a wave's worth of VPCs to the cloud, you know, I'm about to spin up some VPCs, I want you to say yes, that's a good idea to do right now. Or if I'm about to create your landing zone with, you know, hundreds of, dozens of VPCs, dozens of subnets, it's going to be a bit painful to unwind all of that. So let's get someone to have a look at it first, so that we can kind of get started on the right foot. It's always going to be possible to modify later, right? But we want to make sure we get the basics right to avoid rework. And then dashboards. The dashboard is kind of a key central place where teams can come to see what's going on in the project. What progress have we made? What's stuck? So we can see what VMs have migrated, what waves have migrated, what applications have migrated. And it's a place where the team can come to see the true status of the project right now. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Rajesh, who's going to do a deeper dive into the product, so you can see how some of these concepts actually turn into product. Thanks, Rajesh.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. Peter mentioned few very important tenets which are important for transformation projects. And before I get into the product and show you how each one of those tenets are mirrored and implemented in the product, let me just understand, how many of you have VMware workloads running on premises today? Raise your hand. Okay, majority of you. For those of you who have VMware workloads, how many of you have some active migration projects to migrate them over to cloud? Okay, there are quite a few. And for those who have not started any projects, how many of you have plans to migrate those workloads to the cloud? Okay, there are quite a few. So I think the content that we are going to share here will be useful for all of you. One thing is that you are not alone in this journey. We have seen that there are thousands of customers who have built their applications on VMware, but now they are looking for alternatives. Gartner did a poll, and then they found that 73% of the VMware customers are actually looking for alternatives where they can run those applications in cloud native environment. And significant number of customers are actually building newer workloads or newer applications in cloud native environment. Now, why this is important? For those of you who have people working in your organization who are experienced in VMware and they are lacking AWS cloud skills, this feels like an infrastructure transformation project which involves lot of skill building, where they will have to now start thinking about each of this VMware stack component and how it connects with AWS environment. Also look at the technical feasibility of migrating all of those workloads and identify the migration path. So that is where this complexity and skills related challenges that Peter talked about come into picture. And so far what has happened is we have used the traditional method of assessment, planning, migration and modernization as a way to move those workloads to cloud. Now this involves lot of repeated work which people have to do manually. It is labor intensive, error prone and costly. Also this work is not done by one person. There are many people who are working on this project, they have dependencies on each other, and those bottlenecks actually stall the migrations or sometimes slow those down. And we have used many tools today. I think all of you might be using some of the tools which AWS provides or our partners have created for automating many of these manual tasks. But one thing which is not done is providing a shared context across all of those tools and have a single source of truth, one experience where all of those collaborators can work together in a project and then have significant amount of automation to reduce the time it takes to migrate projects. Some of these projects take 2 years or 3 years to migrate large estate of VMware applications to cloud. How can we collapse that to a fraction of time? And now with generative AI and mainly the agentic AI and innovation in Amazon Cube developer, we have an opportunity to do exactly that. That's where this is the product that we launched at this reInvent, where it is a Q developer's web-based experience, which brings all of those transformation capabilities together, where users from different organizations, different roles can come together and start working on those migration projects and continue their transformation journey beyond moving those workloads to migration to cloud. Now, there are few capabilities that we have in this product that I would quickly talk about, and some of those will clearly show how the tenets that Peter talked about are implemented in the product here. So first one is, now Q developer has a web-based experience. That experience allows you to start migration project with all of the users that you have in the organization. And that experience is not just for starting the migration, it is for end-to-end migration process. You are in this web experience where you would be able to start platform discovery, do planning, do migration, identify any dependencies, errors, get approvals, track progress. Everything happens in this one new experience. Second thing is, based on our 18 years of experience helping thousands of customers migrate their workloads, we have built AI agents, and those agents are doing bulk of the automation in this process. We have made sure that we are balancing automation with human oversight, because some of those decisions in transformation projects that you are making need to be properly reviewed, vetted. So there is always human oversight for doing any of those tasks. and queue smartly identifies those tasks and prompts for user input. It will identify that this particular automation that I am performing will require an approver, and the person who has the approver rights will get that notification to go and approve that task. So, that is the level of human oversight which is implemented here, and the team collaboration allows even people from different organizations. So, you have a consulting partner or an AWS professional services, your own VMware expert, AWS experts, network experts, they all can come together and start working on this transformation project together, and the automation uses LLM for both the chat conversational experience as well as for powering all of those agents that we have built. So, how does this work? You just get started with this web experience by defining the goals that you have for your project, and this is where the queue will understand whether you want to do a VMware transformation, .NET transformation, mainframe transformation, and any other workloads that you have. Once you provide your goal, the queue is going to generate a plan. This plan is actually created based on the experience and training that we have provided to queue already. So, it will provide you a plan to do the transformation project and start asking you for additional details that queue needs at that point in time. And there are set of agents that Peter talked about. We are going to go into details of how each one of those are implemented. So, the important part for migration is having a common data store for all your inventory configurations and the resources that you want to transform. Queue allows you to bring that data together, securely store those in your account, and that data will be used only for planning and transformation of your projects. It is not being used for any other purpose. So, queue allows you to bring that data and then parse it and standardize it in a way that the subsequent agents will be able to use that information, and you do not have to do that task again and again. So, that is the important part. It also provides you flexibility. If you already have a lot of VMware data exported through RV tools, then you can use that file and directly upload it here. If you want the live data and start capturing those, there are AWS provided data collectors that you can install. They come in two variants like agent based and agentless. So, depending on your need and the use case, you start collecting all this data, and queue will identify and summarize and say how many applications or how many servers, how many networks that it has detected. If you are happy that it represents your source environment, you can continue with the next steps or continue getting more data. So, that is an important step which is now bringing everything together. The second part of migration is planning. Now, this is where your application integrity come into picture. When you have thousands of virtual machines that you want to migrate and they are spread across multiple networks, you want to make sure that all the dependent components are migrated together. So, when the migration is done, the application is functional and performant. So, that is what this agent does. It looks at all the data, the network connections, and then identify what are the logical move groups, and those resources are grouped. Queue generates that plan for you and provides you that for your review. Once you review the plan, and if you like it, you go and start doing the migration, but otherwise it will also give you an opportunity to edit that. Sometimes you may have people who have lot of domain knowledge, and they understand that even though there is dependency for business reason, I might want to delay the migration of a particular application. You can go and make those edits and upload the plan again. So, queue knows that what is the human approved and provided input, and that is what it is going to do to start automation of the next step. Now, the most critical and complex part of VMware transformation, when you want to run that natively, those applications into EC2, is network conversion. The network stack, the network configurations, how you use it in your NSX environment with all the firewall rules and your VLANs, that are very different than how you are going to operate that in EC2. So, what queue does here is allows you to provide your current network configuration, but then smartly start converting that to the AWS equivalent network components. And each one of those are available for you in infrastructure as code, where you can go and start looking at inspecting the artifacts that Q has generated, and then go ahead and allow Q to deploy that automatically for you. Another option is you can use those artifacts and you deploy those yourself. Q also connects with your target account and looks at any other existing VPCs which are there, and give you an option whether you want to configure the security rules or subnets in the existing VPC, or you want to create a new one. And depending on your choice, it is going to start provisioning all of those resources in your target environment. So that kind of significantly reduces the manual work, and more importantly, all the errors that can happen in that process. So again, the experience is the same web application where you started your migration journey. When it reaches this step, it is going to ask you if you want to provide your NSX data, or you want to use your RV tools files, and based on that, it is going to start creating the network, converted network artifacts. And these artifacts are available for you to review. It also gives you recommendations on how you are going to deploy that in your target environment. And finally, once you are satisfied with the network configuration, you can ask you to proceed with the migration orchestration. Now, migration orchestrator is one agent that brings all of these things together. So what it will do is understand what inventory that you had identified, what selection you made in terms of set of waves and the order in which you want to migrate. Then it looks at your network configurations that you decided. It also looks at all the human inputs which are provided, and if there are any errors which requires manual work to resolve, all of those things come together, and what you get is a migration plan. And that migration plan is an artifact which can directly be used with existing rehost migration service like AWS application migration service. Rather than you do all of these things manually, now this plan is available for application migration service MGN to start deploying all of those resources in the cloud. And you are not, you are still in the web console where you will start getting the updates at what resources are already deployed, what is the progress, how it is moving forward. So you can visualize the progress with this dashboard. The dashboard provides you information of the servers, waves, applications and networks which are migrated, which are stalled, how it is moving forward, all of those things you can track. Besides this visual dashboard, you also go and have a visibility of all the actions that agents have performed and all the actions that humans have performed in a chronological order. So that is a workload which is available. Our important tenet is that we wanted to make this a responsible AI, where you have auditability, you know that what actions were performed by agents and what actions were performed by humans, and where humans provided different inputs to the agents. So all of this information is available for you in your account to go and look at, and that's how you will gain confidence that what agent is doing is the right thing, or where you need to go and give different instructions to the agent. So that's the visibility that you get, and we realize that there are many partners who have done this kind of migration and modernization projects using existing tools or the solutions that they have built. So we worked with our AWS professional services and some of these large consulting partners, and we shared how we are thinking about building this capability. We looked at their inputs, and that actually informed us on how we should prioritize some of those features and how we should design it in such a way that all those people who have decades of experience of doing similar modernization projects, they can readily use the capability that we are providing. So this capability is available for the partners to use, all of you customers to use yourself, or AWS professional services. They collectively work in your account, in your environment, and start doing this migration. And I really appreciate the partnership that these companies have with us, and some of them have also shared feedback, where Suranjan Chatterjee, He thought that VMware workload migration is now in different era with generative AI in terms of the complexity which it had, how it simplifies, and now you are able to do all of this migration at a unmatched pace, and also the ease of migration that TCS has seen. And I think the significant value that they saw is the human oversight that we are providing while balancing the automation and that responsible AI tenet. So that's what TCS really liked. From Cognizant, we got feedback that the entire migration process for very complex migration is now simplified, and you are able to finish that faster. And the way Cognizant saw this is that it's a continuous journey. You are not just living with migration. They will be able to use the same tool for helping you in the end-to-end modernization journey as well. We also did some benchmarking, so this gives you some idea that we picked few of those very complex tasks and had around 500 virtual machines environment where we wanted to do the initial wave plan, look at all of those dependencies, and we asked those people who were doing it for more than 10 years and asked them to do it manually and with current tools, how much time it took for them. And the wave plan generation, where for very experienced people it took 2 weeks, 2 work weeks. When they use this agent, they were able to get the same precision, same data in 15 minutes. So that kind of unblocks the next set of activities that you need to do when you have this kind of plan quickly available. The same thing was for network conversion. Looking at all of those on-premises rules and converting that to AWS equivalent, our teams, what would take 2 weeks was done in less than 1 hour, but that was not just the conversion. Those resources were also provisioned by that time after doing the review. So that's the kind of automation that we are seeing, and obviously we want to see how you use this capability in your environment and what is your experience and what is your feedback, because we are just getting started. It is available in preview, and we want to build more capabilities based on all of your feedback. So finally, before you look at the demo, the key things that I believe this product will provide is faster time to value. Those projects which are taking more than 2 years, how you can complete it in a fraction of time, improve the productivity of your transformation teams, and ultimately by moving off of VMware and run those natively in EC2, you will get the savings both in terms of licensing and infrastructure spend that you have on AWS. So look forward to hearing more feedback from you, and at this time let me invite Atul to come here and give us a demo of the product, a working product, how it works. Atul.
All right. To use a QDeveloper web application, you need a QDeveloper Pro subscription. You can log into the web application using your single sign-on credentials with AWS Identity Center. Once you're in the web application, Q automatically creates a workspace for you, and you can straight away dive into creating a transformation job. Q presents you the different options and allows you to set your migration goals or your transformation goals. I am going to go ahead and say VMware migration as my goal over here. Once I provide Q my goal, Q summarizes my migration goal of moving my VMs to EC2 and provides me a job name. I can simply ask Q in natural language. I can chat with it and ask it to change the job name over here, for example, and start my job right away. One of the first things Q does is it puts together a job plan for me. This job plan is a set of detailed steps that Q will follow to execute my transformation job. For a VMware job, this will be discovery of my on-premises data servers, planning my migration waves, converting my network, as well as finally migrating my servers. As the agent progresses through the job, it dynamically updates this plan based on its learnings. At any point, if there is human input needed, there is a human in the loop collaboration step that is created. For example, over here, I'm being asked to create and select a connector. A connector is queue's mechanism to connect to external resources. In the case of a VMware job, this would be an AWS account. It could be a source AWS account where I'll collect the server inventory and network configuration data for my on-premises environment, or it could be the target account where I will configure my AWS VPCs and network along with the EC2 instances that will be launched. You can create a new connector over here with a new account, or use an existing connector which you might have created for a previous job. I'm going to go ahead and select one of the previous connectors I had set up. The connectors can be approved by your cloud admin, and it's a one-click approve and you're ready to go. One of the things that you can do with any of the workspaces that you create in Queue is add collaborators, as Rajesh mentioned initially. These collaborators can have any of the 4 fine-grained access control roles. There can be view-only permissions. There can be permissions to continue driving a job forward without the ability to select critical artifacts. There can be approver permissions to approve critical artifacts. And finally, the admin permissions to do all of that along with adding more collaborators to a workspace. I'm going to add Rajesh as a collaborator to my workspace. Next, we come to the critical step of collecting the on-premises data. You can upload exports from tools such as RV tools, or if you're using NSX's software-defined networking on-premises, in that case, you can use an AWS-provided open-source tool called import-export for NSX and upload a zip file from there. If you want to collect data using AWS Zone Agents, you can use AWS Application Discovery Service, which collects the server inventory as well as the network traffic data that will be required for your wave planning and application grouping. Once I've uploaded my files and set up my collectors, I can send this to Queue to start planning my migration. Queue collects the data, analyzes it, classifies the data, and summarizes it for me. It provides me a view of the total number of servers it's identified, and it also provides me an indication of the data quality and completeness. It gives me an indication of how many servers do not have any connection data, and so they would not be grouped in an application wave. So I can use this to understand when am I ready to continue with my journey, when am I ready, when is Queue ready to really go on with wave planning, and when it's ready, I go on, ask you to plan my waves. At this stage, Queue uses graph neural networks to plan my waves. These waves are planned keeping application integrity in mind. We use the network traffic data along with the server inventory to group these application servers and provide the recommendation. You can download the recommendations, edit it to change any of the groupings or remove servers that are not in scope, and upload it back to Queue. Once you are ready with the waves, you send it to Queue, and Queue uses that to plan your waves. Rajesh mentioned about being able to watch an audit trail. At any point, you can go to the work log tab and see the complete audit trail of the steps performed by you, by any of your collaborators, or by Queue in one single place. You can filter this audit trail by the particular step you're interested in, or you can download this trail for further detailed analysis. Now we come to one of the most critical tasks, which is the network translation piece. For the network translation piece, you connect your target AWS account where your network will be provisioned. And once you've connected the target AWS account, Queue uses the RV tools or the network configuration data that I had uploaded previously to generate the AWS VPCs, subnets, security groups, transit gateways, internet gateways, all of the stuff for deployment to your account. Queue also generates CDK and CloudFormation templates that you can download, review, edit, and upload back. Queue deploys the generated VPCs directly to your account, or you have the control to do that deployment yourself as well. I'm going to go ahead and ask you to deploy this. Now you'll see that Queue's already updated the plan to add the migration waves. You can go and select which wave you're interested in, and for each wave you can set your EC2 preferences. Queue allows you to define the performance metrics based on which your EC2 instances would be sized and associated with your wave. Along with the preferences that you've specified and the metrics you use, you can also specify the instance tenancy. So depending on your licensing needs, you can choose dedicated tenancy, or you can go with shared tenancy EC2. Finally, Q uses all the artifacts that it has generated, including the servers in the wave, the target network configuration, the security groups, as well as the EC2 instance sizing recommendations to generate a comprehensive migration plan. You can download this plan, make any final edit you want to make over there, and upload it back to Q to finally perform the migration using AWS's application migration services behind the scenes. Q provides a dashboard tab, which provides a detailed view into your job's progress. You can view the status of each migration wave. You can view the status of your migration your applications, the servers in each application, as well as the network. Migration practitioners and project managers can use this dashboard to identify any migrations that are lagging behind, that are stalled, and they can use this to bring that back on track, keep that fit, and they can finalize the migrations with that. With that, we will go back to our slides. You can get started with Q Developer. You can learn more about it using the QR code on the left, and you can try out the product preview with the one on the right. I'm going to keep this for a few seconds for those trying to get a snap. Right. With that, we are at the end of our presentation. We are really excited, and we can't wait to see how you use Q Developer to speed up your VMware migrations. Rajesh, Peter, and I, we are going to be hanging around. If you have any questions, please do come over and talk to us. Thank you.